Well, hello, AP Euro people. What a week. I don't know how this gets any better for students. 3 snow days in a row, followed by a 4-day weekend. So that's pretty awesome. And we need every moment of that. So we do have a lecture today. So please make sure you listen. And I apologize because it's taken forever for these things to process and upload. So I don't know when I'll get it on there. But anyway, it'll be during the school day. So I went and got my binder so I don't have to do the on the screen thing because I hate that because I can't see ahead of where I'm at. But if I recall correctly, we were on page 8. And I'm sorry for all the up close personal weird because I can't see the little clock on how long I've been talking. So we're on page 8, getting ready to discuss the Decembrist uprising. So first and foremost, Decembrist is not about December. A Decembrist, weirdly enough, is a military junior officer. So always I gotta have issues with my hair. So, and again, I apologize because I just woke up and not much happening up here. So sorry about that if it's scary. So we're now in Russia looking at again these attempts to use liberalism or use something to overthrow conservatism and the strong conservative pushback against any of those attempts. And that's what's going to happen with the Decembrist uprising. So Tsar Alexander I initially favored, yay, awesome, Tsar. He's an enlightened despot. Remember, an enlightened despot means I can change some things that don't take away my power. I can stop torture. I can stop censorship of newspapers, but I'm not going to do anything that actually takes away any of my power. Um, he's going to die, and his youngest brother Nicholas is going to be next in line. And Nicholas is not like his brother. He is complete opposite of his brother. So the Decembrist, again, there's our definition, junior military officers, upper class opponents of autocratic Russian system. And they supported popular grievances. The first, and this is why this is always asked about on AP exams. I'm not kidding. I think it's on every single exam. Usually it's a picture, and it's a difficult picture because the uprising is the military itself, but they're representing um, grievances of the Russian society. So it's not like a coup or an armed takeover. They're still, again, representing the upper class. And that is why, if you look at to the first upper class revolt, we don't have many of those in history. That doesn't really ever happen because the upper class is usually doing fine and doing well. So again, sought to prevent Nicholas I, and the revolt is going to be suppressed by Nicholas I. And again, this will be put down horrifically and will not succeed. Nicholas becomes Europe's most reactionary monarch, and that means any attempt at any lessening of his power, he's going to react 10 times overfold. Let me see if I can draw an analogy to that, right? Like, for instance, when you come home from school and you left a spoon out on the sink, you don't put your spoon in the sink from your cereal bowl, you leave it on the counter. And your parent erupts. You're going to lose your car. You can't be trusted because you can't follow the rules. That's reactionary, right? Like, hey, that's a little extreme. That is Nicholas. Russia became a police state with censorship, a secret police. Remember what we always say about a secret police. That is never, ever a good sign for a country or the path of a country if they have a secret police. And state-sponsored terrorism. No representative assemblies. This is going to be our one country that has nothing. They don't have a Congress, a parliament, a diet. They don't have any representation whatsoever. Education limited and university curricula carefully monitored by the government. And again, intellectuals are going to react strongly to this. They're developing two opposing camps: the Slavophiles, which believe that the Russian village culture was superior to that in the West. They're going to be a small minority. And the Westernizers wanted to extend the genius of the Western of Russian culture by industrialization and setting up a constitutional government. Those are going to be smaller. So that's what's happening in all those places. And what they're so concerned about is on page 7, liberalism. And this liberalism is again what's going to spread across Europe as a result of the French Revolution. And remember, we're talking about liberalism as a policy, not as a group of people, like being liberal. That's not what this is about. So, the characteristics of liberalism. Again, first major theory in Western thought that saw the individual as a self sufficient being whose freedom and well being were the sole reason for the existence of society. And, and liberals will extend that. And the only reason for government is to protect me, protect my freedom, protect my liberty, protect my property. That's what John Locke is going to say. And when you do liberalism, I'm going to tell you one of those L's should be John Locke. I'm going to just kind of say it has to be John Locke because that is who the godfather of liberalism is, John Locke. So we look at classical liberalism, reformist and political rather than revolutionary, right? This is not about overthrowing with violence. This is about overthrowing with a constitution. And it's going to be one of the reasons it doesn't work really well because these people aren't violent. These are thinkers, these are writers, these are let's sign petitions, let's protest, but these are not violent people. And we'll see what has to happen in order for things to change. We got to use those nationalist people that are violent. Okay? Individuals entitled to seek their freedom in face of tyranny. Humans have certain natural rights, and government should protect them. That's John Locke. Rights are best guaranteed by a written constitution. That is the sign of a liberal, a constitution, and it must be written down. And that is, again, an essential part of liberalism, a written constitution that specifically spells out what everybody is entitled to, what everybody can't do, and the limits of the government. Careful defined powers. And E, a Republican or a representative form of government. We have to have representation. Now, at the beginning, this wasn't going to sound that great because liberals are only going to say certain people need representation. But again, we're baby stepping, right? We're baby stepping towards that. Democrats were more radical than liberals, more willing to endorse violence. And liberalism in the economy, we've kind of talked about this a little bit. Let me tilt this down a little bit. There we go. We have a couple of people that we're going to talk about, in particular, Adam Smith. Again, here's Adam Smith. You cannot ever forget Adam Smith and The Wealth of Nations. It is the Bible of capitalism, but it is also economic individualism, and that's what capitalism is. It gives everybody the ability to enter the market. Laissez-faire, hands off. The government should stay out of the markets. That hands off should be the guiding principle of all governments. Most productive economy was one that was allowed to make individual choice, and it's called the invisible hand, right? The self-regulating of the market. And I believe we talked about this in the case of sales, right? That the way when we're shopping for clothing and we go to the back part of the store and look for things on sale, the things that we like that we see on sale always are either those sizes that no one could fit into, like who wears a 00, or other really large sizes that don't hit that mainstream target because everybody wanted that shirt, so it's all bought up in the regular. Or the flip side, there is 100 of those ugly, and I always say orange because I don't like orange shirts because no one buys them, and that's the invisible hand. That's what Adam Smith said should govern the economy, that the market should say, not the government. And then we've got a couple of other ones that are really very important. And please note, under this, Adam Smith opposed to mercantilism, right? Capitalism is the opposite of mercantilism, and Adam Smith hates mercantilism, all right? And then we've got three more men that we need to know who they are, and we need to know what their principles are. David Ricardo is the iron law of wages. And what he says is essentially the beginnings of some kind of population control, not for what we think population control, like protecting the environment, there's too many people. But he says, you're poor people, you're making too many babies to work. And as long as there's so many workers, your wages are always going to stay low. Does that make sense? So, poor people, stop having so many babies because that's what's making your wages low. Plentiful supply of workers would keep wages low. And so, workers, you're doing this to yourself. Stop having so many babies. Thomas Malthus, he also believes about this idea of population, that the human population would outstrip the food supply. Now, I don't know that that's probably ever going to happen because we're so good at growing food, but that combined with climate control may come to fruition. Thomas Malthus was a man really far ahead of his time. And then lastly, we have utilitarianism. And this one is the big one. And you can see almost everything in that is in bold or underlined. And you need to know this utilitarianism because it is really very important. It's by Jeremy Bentham. And he has the philosophy that law or any kind of government should be based on the greatest happiness of the greatest number. Now, when we stop and think about it, in the time period of which we're studying, the greatest number of people are poor. And so Bentham is essentially saying government should look out for the greatest number, the poor people. Now, he does not get a lot of traction with this belief system because it doesn't really work very well for those people in government. Jeremy Bentham is a really unique guy. He donates his body to science in a time period when that is not a thing. His body is still in the British Library. It used to and on display, and his head was there, like his real head used to be part of the display, but people kept stealing his head, so they had to take it away. If you look up at him, you probably can find an old picture of him with his real head between his legs. It's very strange. But this idea, utilitarianism, is a really important idea in changing the way governments have to react to people, that the greatest happiness of the greatest number. John Stuart Mill wrote On Liberty, again, a classical statement on liberty of the individual, argued for absolute freedom of opinion to be protected from government censorship and from the tyranny of the majority. And he was a strong, strong supporter of women's rights. He will be one of the first ones to come out and begin writing about that as a man. Impact of liberalism is huge. Inspired various revolutionary movements, again, and these revolutionary movements are going to not necessarily be violent. Influence revolutions in France in the 1830s and 1848s. Liberalism becomes embodied in over 10 constitutions secured between 1815 and 1848 in the German Confederation. Influenced reform measures in Britain from 1830s into the 20th century. Inspired German student organizations, and resulted in mild reforms in Russia. You need to know all of those. Liberalism is the most powerful of our isms in results to change, but nationalism is really the big one. And that's what we're going to look at next on page 11, nationalism. Okay, so nationalism is one of the isms that is usually always negative. It has a negative connotation in politics, and we will look at why. Sought to turn cultural unity into self-government. And that's the reason why it's a negative. It puts the idea in government who's the most patriotic and what symbols mean the most. So instead of patriotism being your own feeling, nationalism makes it everybody's got to do this. And if you're not waving the right flag, and if you're not wearing the right pin, and if you're not saying the right things, then you're not one of us. And that's when it becomes bad. So, what does nationalism look like? Common language, a common history, and common traditions would bring about unity and common loyalties. And that works if you're part of that common. But what happens if you're not? And that's always the problem with nationalism. It doesn't allow for differences. And that's why it's an ism that's always bad. Initially, it's going to be supported, and especially by liberals and Democrats, until we start moving down the line. Immediate origins were the French Revolution, the Napoleonic Wars. And then we get this German nationalist involved, Johann Gottfried Herder. He is described as the father of modern nationalism, saw every cultural group as unique and possessing a distinct national character. It's a Volgeist, evolving over many centuries. But he says no culture is superior to other. That nationalism we can get around, right? No culture is superior. Everybody has their own culture that they adhere to. His ideas led to the notion that every nation should be sovereign and contain all members of the same nationality. And again, that does not bode well for the United States, does it? Then we get to the guy who changes this to German nationalism, Johann Gottlieb Frick. And this is where it takes the bad turn. Considered by some as the father of German nationalism. And German nationalism is different. And unfortunately, that's the nationalism that's going to spread. Spoke of German superiority over other peoples. And that's the nationalism that takes place. And that's the nationalism that is not good. Okay? National revolutionary movements. Spain is going to work in 1820 to crush the French troops authorized by Prussia, Russia, and Austria. Naples is going to have theirs, the Piedmont. The only one on this page that you need to draw a line, a box around, is the Greek Revolution, because all those other ones are going to fail, except Greece. And the reason being is Greece is really different. Europeans concerned with the Eastern question. The Eastern question, anytime you see that, it's the Ottoman Empire. And so what's happening is this Ottoman Empire, this sick old man, this dying empire, Ottomans, and remember when we say Ottomans, that's Islamic, that's Muslim, all of those things. And for Christian Europe, that power vacuum that will be there when the Ottoman Empire collapses is what every one of these four nations want. They want it. They want to suck into that power that the Ottoman Empire is collapsing. Okay? So, which European countries would fill the void in the Balkans, which is the peninsula where Greece is at, resulting from the decline of the Ottoman Empire? And again, remember, Ottoman Muslim. England, France, and Russia accepted Greece's Christian appeal. So, in the midst of this Ottoman Empire is a Christian territory that says, help us, and joined into a united force that defeated the combined Turkish and Egyptian naval forces. So, this isn't about Greece being independent. This is about defeating the Ottoman Empire and essentially Islam. And it is also about who's going to have control of that Balkans, because it certainly isn't going to be those countries. They can't do it. All of those countries, England, France, and Russia, want to control the Balkans. Note to self, World War I starts in the Balkans. Okay? So, top of page 12, the significance of that is 3 of the 5 members of the Concert of Europe supported nationalism, signaling a shift from a united conservatism to nationalistic self-interest. And that, again, is important. All right, we are going to really quickly go over these revolutions of 1830, which again, none of them are successful. And that's the key thing about this. And it's, I think, hard for students. Like, we study so intently things that didn't happen or didn't work. And it's kind of weird, and I get it. But that's what we got to do. Revolutions of 1830 sparked by a wave of liberalism and nationalism against perceived conservative oppression. And so that's what we're looking at. In France, we have the July Revolution. Again, in response, a radical revolt in Paris forced Charles X to abdicate, and then we get Louis Philippe. Philippe. France is now controlled by upper middle class. Again, that's going to spark this wave all throughout. Italy is going to have one. The only thing that we need to know on page 12, other than the significance, is under Italy, we meet 3B, Giuseppe Manzini. He is going to be significant because he is going to be part of the movement that finally creates a united Italy. Now, this is in 1832. It's not going to happen for 50 more years, but that's his name. German states, again, they're going to try, collapse, no issue. On the top of page 13, liberal and nationalistic desires for German unification were easily crushed by Metternich, crushing them. Metternich is crushing all this stuff. Belgium. Belgium is going to be the only place, again, that has the ability to become its own country. 5E in 1839, the great powers declared, not Belgium, but the great powers declared the neutrality of Belgium. Poland, Nicholas I crushes the nationalistic uprising in Poland and guaranteed that Poland is part of the Russian Empire for another 50 years as well. The only positive thing is Prussia is going to establish the Zollverein in 1834, and this is an economic group of people. Established an economic union of 17 Germanic states, which eliminated internal terrorists and set the tone for greater union. So when we start talking about the unification of Germany, it starts with the Zollverein and the idea that economically these Germanic states say we can do this and improve the economic status of these Germanic states. All right? And so we're going to stop there because the liberal reform in England is a deep, deep topic, and we need to be, I think, in person for that. All right, so enjoy the rest of your day and your 4-day weekend, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Talk to you on Tuesday. Bye. Oh, and make sure you go back and do the Wednesday check-in. I put that on a little bit late, so make sure you guys all go back and do that. All right? I will talk to you later. Have a great 4-day weekend. Bye.